Welcome to FilmFlix Movie Recap. In today's recap, we're going to be reviewing the movie called No Country for Old Men. The movie begins with a panoramic view of a barren and desolate West Texas landscape in June 1980. The local sheriff, Sheriff Bell, provides a voice-over narration, expressing his concern about the changing times. He notes that in the past, some sheriffs did not need to have guns, including his father who was also a sheriff. However, in modern times, he has been forced to deal with violent crimes, such as the case of an unrepentant teenage boy who he had to send to the electric chair for killing a girl. Meanwhile, on a deserted highway, Anton Chigurh is detained by a deputy who notices a strange device in Chigurh's possession. The deputy contacts Sheriff Bell, but before he can finish the call, Chigurh murders him with a handcuff chain. Chigurh then proceeds to steal a squad car and pull over a random motorist, whom he kills with a captive bolt pistol. Elsewhere in the desert, Llewellyn Moss is hunting pronghorns when he notices a wounded pit bull and tracks it to a scene of violence involving dead Mexican criminals and dogs. He finds a catalog case containing $2 million and a pistol, and takes them home, hiding the submachine gun he had taken from the deputy under his mobile home. Moss decides to return to the scene of the shootout to give water to a wounded driver but finds him dead. When he tries to leave, he is attacked by gunmen who chase him and shoot him in the shoulder. Moss manages to escape and crosses a river, killing a pit bull that was sent after him. Chigurh stops at a gas station and gets into a confrontation with the proprietor over a coin toss, which ultimately determines the proprietor's fate. Moss, realizing the danger he is in, sends his wife to stay with her mother and takes the money, and leaves separately. Later that night, two men dressed in fine clothing escort Chigurh to the location of the failed drug exchange. There, Chigurh removes the VIN tag from Moss's truck, and inspects the dead bodies. The well-dressed men provide Chigurh with a tracking device that has not received any signals, which he can use to locate the money-filled catalog case with a hidden transponder. Chigurh picks up a pistol next to one of the deceased men and kills both of his escorts. The next day, Sheriff Bell and Deputy Wendell investigate a report of a burning car, and discover it belongs to the deceased motorist. They trace the tire tracks to the site of the gunfight and find Moss's truck. However, the heroin in the back of the pickup has gone missing. After searching the area, they call in federal authorities for assistance. Chigurh breaks into Moss and Carla Jean's trailer using a captive bolt pistol, and discovers that they have left in a hurry. He tries to intimidate the trailer park manager into revealing where Moss works, but leaves when he hears noises from an adjacent room. Chigurh finds a phone bill that reveals the couple has made numerous calls to Odessa, TX. Moss puts his wife on a bus and promises to call her in a few days. He rents a motel room and hides the money-filled case in the HVAC duct using a clothes bar from the closet. Later, Moss purchases a tent and other supplies from a sporting goods store, saws off the shotgun barrel and stock, and rents a second motel room adjacent to the first. Meanwhile, Chigurh uses the phone bill to try to determine where Moss is heading and begins driving in an attempt to anticipate his movements. When the tracking device on the money-filled case goes off, Chigurh deduces that Moss is in the first motel room. He rents a room himself, and quietly approaches Moss's room barefoot. Chigurh breaks into the room using the captive bolt pistol and discovers 3 Mexicans, whom he kills with a suppressed shotgun. Moss hears the gunfire and escapes with the money. He hitches a ride out of the area with a driver who warns him against hitchhiking. Carson Wells, a bounty hunter, is hired by a businessman named Stephen Root to handle the situation regarding the numerous killings by a psychopathic killer named Chigurh. Wells had previous dealings with Chigurh and knows him by sight. He compares him to the bubonic plague, and is hired to retrieve the money and control the situation. Moss rents a room in an old hotel and tries to figure out how Chigurh tracked him down. He finds the transponder Chigurh used to locate him and hears suspicious noises. When Chigurh breaks into his room, Moss shoots him and drops the case out of the window, only to be wounded in the side by the door lock. Moss commandeers a truck, but Chigurh kills the driver. Moss crashes the truck and hides, shooting and wounding Chigurh before escaping to Mexico. Sheriff Bell is disturbed by what he saw in the desert, and the deteriorating state of morals in the world. He visits Carla Jean and asks her to put him in touch with her husband. Chigurh steals medical supplies and treats his wound in a motel room, while Carson suggests that Moss hand over the money for protection. When Carson is confronted by Chigurh in his hotel, he tries to strike a deal but is killed when the phone rings. Chigurh tells Moss that he knows where he is, and will go to Carla Jean's mother's house instead. Moss vows to kill him. After leaving the hospital, Moss retrieves the case and calls Carla Jean at her mother's home in Odessa, instructing her to fly to El Paso to meet him. Meanwhile, Chigurh goes to Dallas and kills the businessman who hired Carson and the Mexicans. His truck breaks down and a chicken farmer helps him. Chigurh asks the farmer where the nearest airport is, and the farmer points him to El Paso. Chigurh then washes the chicken feathers off his truck at a car wash. The Mexicans who were following Carla Jean and her mother to the airport ask where they are headed and what hotel they are staying in, trying to locate Moss. Carla Jean calls Sheriff Bell and tells him where Moss is staying. At the hotel, Moss declines an invitation to a woman's room and instead stays in his own room. Sheriff Bell hears gunfire and sees a truck speeding away from Moss's motel. When he arrives, he finds Moss and the woman dead, with the money case missing. Sheriff Bell decides to retire, disturbed by the violence he's witnessed. He visits his uncle, who tells him he's being vain, and shares the story of how Sheriff Bell's grandfather died. Chigurh visits Carla Jean after her mother's funeral and flips a coin, but Carla Jean refuses to play his game. Chigurh insists that he has no choice in whether or not to kill her. As he leaves, he is hit by a car and injured. At home, Sheriff Bell recounts a dream he had about his father, who disappeared into the darkness carrying a horn with embers inside that glowed like moonlight. And that's all for this recap. See you in the next one.